That's right. I'm trying to get JP.
That's because you don't have access to email accounts anymore. So what's it you Oh, okay. I know, but
Want to come through? Oh, no.
It's going to be very telling.
Hello there, how are you? Yes. So we're live streaming? Wow, that's terrific.
I do recognize you back, too. You recognized me? I did. Actually, I did.
That's a beautiful camera.
So, what do you like about Hampton Falls?
I think Hampton Falls is a fantastic community. I love the tranquility, I love the orchards, I love the farms, and I love the people in Hampton Falls. Hampton Falls brings me back to the way New Hampshire was years and years ago, and I'm just hoping that we can keep it this way.
What would be the one biggest thing that you think you would change here in Hampton Falls?
I think the only thing I would change was to try to improve the civility that exists so that people are talked to at meetings respectfully. And I think that has been a deficit in the community over the past few years.
I never could remember the last one.
Yes, I think it's an important factor. And I also believe in stability of taxes. I also believe in strong law enforcement and fire. I think the safety professionals need to have the resources necessary to be successful. And I think that's certainly a concern as well. Yes, they did. They both went to LAS, and one went on, both went on to college, and one went on to graduate school. Just completed graduate school in Scotland and has her master's degree in security studies, and now hopefully is looking for a job, and hopefully gets a job. Temporarily, she's working for me, which hopefully she gets a job elsewhere. Yeah.
So what would be the first thing you would change? Yeah, that's the first selection.
I think what I would change is I would try to work with the other selectmen to form a partnership so that things could happen in a respectful and an intelligent manner.
What would you do in terms of contracts?
I think in my position, in my company, we administer thousands and thousands of contracts for services asimilar to communities. And what we do is we carefully analyze them. We have specifications so that everybody is bidding on the same thing. There are certain specs set so everybody understands what they're bidding on so that the quality of services are consistent across the board.
I think we can all agree on that.
Certainly.
Is there anything that you would like to see? I wasn't really
Well, I've been in New Hampshire now for almost 40 years. I was a member of the New Hampshire legislature for 2 terms. I own a company and we employ about 150 people that I founded nearly 30 years ago. So I understand business, I understand community, and I understand government, and I think that's all very important in being in town government. I would like to ask them for their vote. To change anything, they have to participate, and I'm asking for their participation on March 12th. I want your vote more than anything else. Thank you.
One of your sons is living with one son. I was going to say, 2 daughters and 1 son. He's living in town, right? He lives right next to me. Yeah. Oh, I mean, if there happens to be neighbors. I'm Beverly.
Good. I'm not so used to seeing me dressed up.
I know. We've got the Hampton Falls Tricentennial, right?
Right.
All right. So what do we got here?
Little knit caps.
Okay.
Medallions,
and the Tricentennial Medallion.
Terrific. So now, how much are we raising so far?
Not enough. Not enough.
I can appreciate that. Absolutely. Especially. So, do we have a number we're shooting for here?
Oh, we're trying to raise at least 5,000.
5,000.
Yeah.
Okay. Which here tonight?
Yeah. No,
Okay.
not tonight.
No, there's two
Oh yeah, that'd
styles.
be great.
That'd be great, right?
There's the one with
I would say this one.
okay.
Yeah, this is the one I have on, and then these are just caps.
And where are the medallions? Does Barbara have the medallions?
Yeah, Barbara has
So
medallions.
1836, 46, 56, 63. Let me get them.
How many medallions are you getting?
Just one. Do you have bags, Weezy?
I don't.
We're going to see some other candidates. Speaking of candidates,
George, how are you? Good to see you.
Tim Zilkowski.
Nice. I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Selectmen.
Sitting selectman.
Sitting Selectmen. How are you tonight?
I'm doing fantastic.
All right, we are live streaming for the people of Hampton Falls here.
Oh, perfect.
So, what do you like about Hampton Falls? Like, what brought you here initially?
So what? I grew up in Melrose, which was just north of Boston, and when I've been here for 20 years, and at the time, I was running the business, 24/7, and I'd get up on a Saturday and tell my wife I'd be home in a couple hours, and a couple hours turned into 8, 9, 10 hours on a Saturday. So it got to the point where my wife suggested that, how do you feel about commuting? And you'll be able to second guess getting up on a Saturday morning to go into work. So I said, you know what, maybe that's not a bad idea. We were familiar with the area because I was a graduate of UNH, and Durham being a little north of here, we kind of knew of the Hampton area. Found a plot of land online and said, okay, let's give it a shot. And so that's how we ended up here. And
What do you enjoy doing as a selectman?
I've met a lot of people. It's been an interesting 3 years. So the biggest enjoyment is the diverse amount of people that I've been able to meet. And then I enjoy tackling the issues.
What would you say are the three biggest issues that you have faced so far, and then what you think you're going to have to face going forward?
Well, I really think that the biggest issue is really understanding what goes into establishing the tax rate, and that seemed to be the number one issue for me for 2018 was understanding what made up that tax rate, what we could do as selectmen at the town, on the town side. There was always a perception in town that the town is the town and the school is the school, and I never understood that because when I opened up my mailbox and got my tax bill, it was one bill. It wasn't one for the school. It wasn't one for the town. And so I always felt that that there needs to be some working together with both town and school to understand how each of each other's budgets affect the overall tax rate, and I feel like I've made progress with that this year. And but as far as what the selectmen can control is the town portion of it, and I think this year we took a hard look at all of our expenses, all of our proposed warrant articles. We spent a lot of time on the budget this year, and I'm happy where we ended up with it to a certain degree.
So what do you think are the most important issues for the next year?
One of the, and I heard this tonight. I was speaking with a few folks here tonight. For better or for worse, the town was divided over the school issue and passing some sort of project down there, and I think one of the most important things is to unite this town and bridge the gap in between what divided it for so long. And so that's certainly something that I'm interested in tackling. We've got some infrastructure issues that we need to look at. We had our first major problem with a culvert, and that's just the first of a few that I've been able to identify. And so that first one is going to come to a conclusion here in March or April timeframe. So there's some infrastructure problems, specifically relating to the culverts. So I need to dive into and see if we can solve those problems and continue to focus on the budget.
So you talk about healing the divide. What would you do to heal the divide? That seems like a pretty. It feels like you're going to boil the ocean.
Well, you know, George. For better or for worse, with this campaign process, in the last 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, since it was known that it was going to be a contested election, I've been out there pounding the pavement and meeting a whole spectrum of different people, and it's amazing just the conversations that I've had with individuals that I never thought would support me, that may very well support me, and people that were for one issue or against another issue, and just by being able to have a conversation with individuals, you're able to put some myths to rest and create some bridges. So,
according to the latest Department of Ed, Hampton Falls is now 29th in the state, dropping from 8th and 9th. What do you think is the greatest reason for that decline?
I honestly don't have an answer for that, and that's information. That's new information to me. You know, I mean, that's probably a better question for the school board. You know, I do have 4 children, 2 of which that have already went through LAS. I have a one that's leaving this year, going over to the high school, and I have a young second grader. So, but I don't have an answer for that one because I'm just that's new information to me.
With the town tax rate almost at $2 per thousand, right? What more can we do to lower that tax rate? Because we can't. You're saying that you can't affect the school, right? How much more do you see that going down?
Well, I honestly, from the numbers I've been working with over the last couple of weeks, I don't see it going down. I see it being stable. I really don't think it's going up. You know, I think there's a false narrative out there that that once the bond payment kicks in this year, that the tax rate is going to spike, and my numbers are saying exactly the opposite. So,
what are your numbers? What are your numbers actually saying?
My numbers are actually saying that the tax rate will remain neutral, and will remain neutral.
Going into the next couple of years.
Well, bond
payments still
going into the next 2 tax bills. So our next 2 tax bills, because the budgets that we're working off in the proposed warrant articles and budgets for both that are going to the ballot here in a couple weeks. My numbers tell me that if everything passes, and then we take a look at the available rainy day money that will be left over, and what we could use for that. Of course, there's going to need to be the debate as to what's the right number to leave in the rainy day fund, and once that's established, we'll see what's left over. My accounting says that we will not see a tax increase. I honestly don't think we're going to see a tax decrease, which is which is unfortunate because one of the big buzzes in town, George, right now is that our assessments went up 12% on average. Some folks it went up higher, some folks went up, but the average is 12%. The tax rate came down 6.03%. Okay, so it didn't come down 12%. So in order for that assessment to be neutral for folks, the tax rate needed to come down 12%, and it was only able to come down six, like I said, just over 6%.
So our overall commit though has gone up. When you combine all, the town, the Rockingham County, the school, and the state, our overall commit has gone up. Are we saying that that's going to be level?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm following.
So it's the total amount of monies that we would then pay. You know, while our tax rates have gone down, the total amount has actually gone up in terms of the dollar amount.
I'm slightly. I guess let me put it this way. From where we are currently, at our tax rate at $19 and change, given what's on the table for spending for 2019, and also taking into consideration what our balance is going to be left, what the comfort level is to be in the rainy day fund. My position is that $250,000 is the right number for the rainy day fund. If there's agreement there for the next cycle, which there was agreement in this past cycle, the tax rate should remain neutral.
Now you said 2 years. What happens in year 3 and 4?
Well, I want to correct when I say 2 years. The next two tax cycle bills, which is really just 1 year. The next bill that comes out is in July, and then December of 2019. So it's really through the next tax bill, which is 2019 December. What happens after that? It all depends on what that spending is going to be. Do we have more increased warrant articles? Do we have more increased budgets? One of my goals here with this year is, with all the anxiety over the town assessment, a town assessment should be a good thing. That means all our property values are going up. I think the double whammy is that 5 years ago, when the town did their assessment, it was relatively neutral. I think it only went up by a couple percentage points. So now fast forward to the assessment that we just completed, it had the 12% spike. All along the way, spending increased by whatever multiple. So as the overall assessment went up, the spending also went up and didn't stay as close to neutral as possible. I don't know if that answers your question, but it the devil's in the details, obviously.
Right. So when you talk about the landfill cap monies that were discovered, right?
Yes.
What if we actually do need to cap the landfill? How do we address that?
Yeah, well, see, that's an interesting thing, George. It's a dormant account, that's been dormant for years, and that's why I took a hard look at it. And I said, when was the last time we started funding this? When did we start funding it? And to what end? When we first funded it? Who told us we needed to cap this? Who said we did? Who said we didn't? And for the last several years, there's been no warrant article to add to that. So in my mind, it's been dormant for several years. So I took a look at it, and we asked the questions of the state. We dug into it and said there is no mandate to do anything with that, for better or for worse. So we don't know. We don't know if that ever has to be done. But at this point, we don't know if that would cost $5,000 or $500,000. So without having that knowledge, and without no one knocking on your doors to say that needs to be done, and the fund being dormant, I think the number is $56,000 or $58,000. Approximately every $33,000 represents 7 cents on the tax bill. So we're talking nearly 10 cents on every thousand sitting in a dormant fund. So I made a motion to the Board of Selectmen that got unanimously approved to return that money back to the undesignated fund, or the rainy day fund, and we'll use it to offset the next tax bill.
Have we ever gotten a quote as to what it would actually cost the town to cap that?
No, because there's nobody telling us that we have to. So why would we go out and get a quote for something that no one's telling us we have to do?
And we got that information back from the state
So you know, we'd have to double check with the town administrator where we got that information back.
Okay.
You know, we tasked the town administrator to go out and find out that answer for us, and she came back with the information that there is no mandate, there's nothing we need to do, and we wouldn't be irresponsible to do something else with those monies at this point.
Okay. For the people that aren't here, what would you want to tell them?
Well, what I want to tell them is that you know, there's a lot of false narratives out there as a result of this being a contested election, and that you know, I'd appreciate the objectivity of reaching out to me. I think our social media platform with our website and the information on there is a good source to go and debunk some of the false narratives that have been out there. Certainly attending Board of Selectmen meetings, which, you know, are just not very well attended. Ironically, with this live streaming, we're getting very close. The Board of Selectmen just signed off on a live streaming platform, and I know, George, this is something that you were involved with previously, and you know, we got some of the audio equipment in place. We got we started with a video camera, but then we ran into a roadblock with that as to how do you post it, where do you post it, what policy needs in place. So there's a company out there that provides streaming services, and I want to say the cost is $250 a month, I believe it's going to be, and they're going to come in, set up the camera, and we come in, we just flip the switch, we go live, and they take it from there, and so I think it's my understanding that's going to be in place within the next several weeks.
Wouldn't that mean that people can sit in their homes and watch government in action?
Well, sure. I mean, I'm assuming that that's what's going on right now with this streaming, and the school, down at LAS, they've been doing that for years. You know, so the folks that enjoy that platform, which I'm one of them, my time tends to get limited with all my selectman duties, and I don't have the benefit of going to school board meetings, but I either watch them, stream them live, or I have the ability to go back and watch them after the fact. So that technology has been in place down at the school for several years now, and it's finally coming to town hall. So, yeah.
What do you think is the driver behind that? Why did we wait so long?
You know, I don't know why we waited so long. You know, I mean, it seems like it's such an obvious thing. You know, I mean, and as I learned in town government, things are very slow to develop. You know, and you know, it's the old hurry up and wait. And so we started in on this video recording of meetings, as you know, a couple of years ago, and I thought I was one of the driving forces when I first got elected. It was one of the first orders of business. One of the first motions I made within the first couple of weeks of being elected now 3 years ago, and here it is 3 years later, and you know, we've finally gotten to the point where it's going to happen. You know, it's just that we ran into some roadblocks. You know, like we got the video camera, we got the audio equipment, and then once we started recording, then we ran into the roadblock that we need a social media policy, and some Privacy Act issues came about. So that delayed and stopped the process. But these folks, this streaming company has, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. They have all that legality stuff worked out on how we're able to stream to protect all the 91A laws and all that type of stuff.
So every campaign for the last several years have talked about Route 1 development, right? The need to offset taxes by infusing it with a new tax base, right?
Yes.
Commercialize it.
Yes.
I recall that every selectman has kind of pitched that.
Yes.
Why haven't we moved forward with that, or what are some of the blockers to making that a reality?
So that really starts at the planning board level, and I know that in 2018 a committee was formed that's looking at that, and I know that they've made some progress. I'm certainly absolutely for it because I do think that we do need we do need to broaden the tax base and bring in some more tax revenue from a developed Route 1. And you know, there's going to be some resistance to that, because how do you fund the infrastructure? How do you come up with the money to fund the infrastructure to make it happen? Well, it's going to be one option is going to have to be a bond. You know, we certainly have to look at grant options, and I haven't dived into any of those yet, and that's going to be something for this planning board subcommittee to work with. But it's I know as a selectman, I'm definitely for it, and I'm not sure I'm not sure there's much disagreement amongst the selectmen for that. You know,
What's taking so long to get things off the ground, though? It sounds like we have a consensus. I mean,
well, and again, I'm not trying to deflect, but I think it's a question for the planning board. You know, because that's where the committee has started. You know, and then the selectmen will get involved in it, obviously, but it's not at the point where we're involved in it. I don't know. We have to speak with either Hampton or Seabrook because we need to be able to tap into their infrastructure. Before the selectmen get involved in it, I think all that groundswell work needs to be done at the planning board.
Well, I appreciate your time, Jim.
All right, George. Thank you.
Yeah.
This was fun.
You're welcome.
A lot of people don't even remotely know about it. So I think that having 24-hour coverage is something that should be considered. And I think if the Board of Selectmen came to you and said it's going to cost you $40 more a year and you're going to have 24-hour coverage, I'm sure you'll probably write the check for $40 because you want your family to be protected. And I think that it's short-sighted, and I think it's a lack of support. And I think the same thing holds true with the fire department, making sure they have the best equipment, because they're the first responders. So I was a volunteer firefighter. I was a volunteer EMT for almost 20 years, so I know the firefighting community. And I think that those are the areas that we can't be short-sighted with. So those were important. But with that said, I also think controlling tax is important. And I think looking for economies and taking advantage of those economies and looking for good deals. And good deals come with how you bid contracts. Good deals come from looking at things like the Comcast agreement and making sure that you're getting the best buck, for that contract. Comcast, I know, because we negotiate Comcast contracts, there are opportunities to get significant amounts of money for them, or to get other things like community channels and the like. Another thing that I'm very interested in seeing happen is what's happening right here by this gentleman. I think we should Facebook Live all of the Selectmen's meetings so that if people want to see what's going on, they should be able to see it. Everybody works. It's hard for people to go. But if you want to spend 15 minutes going through it real quickly, it should be available to you. And that was supposed to happen, and it hasn't.
What's your response to Jim's letter when it came out after your letter came? You sent out a letter to everybody.
Yeah.
And then he responded.
Well, my response is it's a shell game, okay? The cutting and taking the monies out of the rainy day fund, okay, were money set aside for emergencies. I was in Stratham of 1993, I believe, when a microburst came through the town and much of the town was destroyed. If the town didn't have money, significant money in the rainy day fund, the people at the town would have to pay increased taxes immediately. So I think that striking a balance, and that's certainly something that people can debate of how much should be in the rainy day fund, and maybe $900,000 was too much. But I do think that stripping the rainy day fund is not a good practice. Any other questions?
You said you were ex-Army?
What's that? Did we what?
Strip the rainy day fund?
We reduced it from 900,000 to 240,000. And the debate really is how much should be in the, thank you, how much should be in the rainy day fund. And I think that saying that we've saved money or we reduced taxes by taking money that was already appropriated is not necessarily reducing taxes. It's just putting the money back in. The fact of the matter is the school bond issue is going to hit. It did not hit fully this year. It's going to hit fully in the next tax year, and taxes are going to go up dramatically, and I think people need to know that. And the Board of Selectmen only controls a small percentage of the budget. Most of it is the school.
What percentage of the budget is the school?
About 80%.
So for all of my time watching the budget, the town had 25%, the school had 75%. I'd say we're a little out of whack. But go back to the rainy day fund. We just distributed it back in taxes this year.
Yes.
We couldn't use it to pay off the school bond, could we?
That's an interesting question. I don't know the answer to that. But that's certainly something that should have been looked into.
Have we already made the decision?
Yeah? That's a very interesting question, actually. Could that money have been? I don't know the answer to it. But I'll tell you this. I would look into that because I think that that would have a positive impact, no doubt.
We could shorten the bond.
Yeah.
By paying it off early, that'd be great. And for taxes. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes plenty of sense. I think there needs to be an openness to listen to people's ideas. Nobody has all the answers, and I think there are some people who think they do. And I think opening the dialogue with people in the community and welcoming people to the meetings to give their views is an important point that I'd like to see happen.
Why doesn't that happen today?
I'm not a member of the board. I can't answer the question, but I know a lot of people feel intimidated going before the board and feel that there's a lack of civility, which diminishes people's desire to go before the board. That's what I've heard from real people. That's not hyperbole, it's fact. And I think that if you go out and talk to people individually, people in the town, a lot of people will tell you that. There are a lot of people who might not, but I'm telling you there's a lot who will. And I think if you talk to department heads, I think that if you talk to them privately, one-on-one, I think they would tell you the same thing.
That's another reason why the town has been so split for so long. People aren't telling each other the truth, and they're not saying, what's really happened in the meetings.
So I'm trying to figure out why we can't get back to civility. Like, what's stopping us from getting back to civility?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I could go out for about 2 hours on civility around us. I mean, there just is a lack of civility everywhere, but
there seems to be.
There really is. I mean, and it's everywhere, but I think that the Board of Selectmen is a small body that should be working together, and there shouldn't be any heavy-handedness in that particular board. And if there is, which I believe there is, I think it doesn't play well in creating a level of civility. And I think that people need to feel that they're being listened to. I mean, you just brought up a great idea and you asked a question that somebody should have asked. Because the Board of Selectmen doesn't have all the answers, nor does the school board. And I
was also trying to figure out why we decide to return all the money in 1 year.
Yeah.
The money was collected over many years.
15 years.
So I would think that if you were going to return the money, you would return it over time instead of just instantly.
And having, I don't disagree. Unless you're using it as a campaign issue to be able to go out there and say you have reduced taxes. And if you read my opponent's letter that he sent out last week, his whole claim is the reduction in taxes. And if the reduction in taxes came solely, which it did, from taking the money out of the rainy day fund, that to me isn't a reduction in taxes. That's a shell game, moving money from one place and putting it somewhere else. So.
So is there any fat in the town budget?
No, I don't think there's any. I don't think there's much fat in the town budget.
I don't either. So can I go to a different subject?
Sure.
Our roads.
Yeah.
So I'm driving into town today,
Yeah.
and I'm noticing that because of the kind of weather we've had this year, the frost heaves are just terrible already. You know, I mean, our roads are going to just be ripped up
Right.
much faster than they normally would be.
Yep.
Okay. Do we get any federal emergency money? You know, disaster relief money around that? I don't know.
No, I don't think so.
No.
No.
Something we probably get.
But I'll tell you where there might be at some point is if there's an infrastructure project. And I talk to a lot of people on Route 1 who are interested in their businesses and sewers. And, you know, nobody's going to vote in town to put sewers in. But we should be prepared if there's an infrastructure proposal out of the federal government to get money for something like that. That would certainly be a good purpose, as would roads.
So not a town funded thing, but if an infrastructure project comes up funded by the federal government,
Correct.
make sure that we
have our ducks in order to be able to. We don't want to go with a shovel-ready project and have no shovel ready to do it with. So we need to understand what needs to be done. It's my understanding that Seabrook is only using 30% capacity of their sewer plant. So they would be willing to allow us to hook up to them. So it's a matter of running. Now, I'm not talking the whole town. I'm just talking Route 1.
Okay, so what benefit do we get by Route 1 by Hampton Falls Route 1 hooking up to the Seabrook sewer system?
What benefit we would get is further development. There are a lot of parcels down there that are not developed and can't be developed because you have to tie into septic. So, for example, there are a couple of restaurant locations. That's the only place that there are potential for significant tax improvements to be able to get more ratables in the commercial area of town. And if you don't have sewers, nobody's going to build there. I know that firsthand.
You don't think you can build there with a proper septic design on the driveway
Lots
system?
are too hard. It's very, especially for things like restaurants or any decent-sized buildings.
If you build the entire parking lot as a septic field, you can solve both your parking problem and you can solve your septic problem at the same time and make those lots developable. Because you need the parking for the size of the
Oh, you do. I mean,
there.
that's.
So I'm just saying we just need to look at the problem in maybe a different way.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we need to encourage development there. That's the thing. The thing I've heard, though, from people who own land there is their concern is that there is no sewers and they'd like to see sewers. Not water, just sewers. They're fine with the water, but they think there should be sewers. And that's not going to happen. Nobody in Hampton Falls is going to vote to spend $7 million or $10 million to put sewers in. So
I don't see that either.
No, I don't see it. So the only way that happens is if there's an infrastructure project. And if there is, we should try to get our fair share of the infrastructure project.
Or we look at a different way of solving the problem, because the question is, do you want those parcels that exist there to be developed into residential housing?
No.
Or do you want those parcels to be developed into commercial
uses.
Okay.
Yeah, restaurants, things like office buildings, retail, mixed-use retail. I mean, anything
so
like
I think
that.
the real question is something as simple as this: what kind of septic system design, the latest kind of design you can have, how much capacity can that field service for whatever the complex is, and then you can tell how many people you would put in that complex and see if it made any sense.
Well, it really comes down to trying to create economic development and open the conversation. And I know.
Then you could say that why don't the landowners right there along Route 1 fund that $7 million project and get their own bond?
They probably can't. They probably
because they can't get somebody to loan them the money, or because it doesn't make economic sense.
Probably both.
That's what I would think too.
Yeah, I would say both.
Okay.
So, but I think that if it can be done with federal money and somebody else is going to get it and we can take advantage of it, I think we certainly should consider that. But I also think you're right about the roads. The roads are horrific, and the roads do need work.
Well, the weather this year is just going to tear them apart.
Tear apart.
Okay,
Yeah.
Just we're going to find our road budget in a couple of years being significantly higher because of the weather that exists today right now. So,
agreed.
Anyway, good meeting you, Lou.
Good meeting you.
This is the kind of conversation that I think you're trying to get with civility, and this is the kind of conversation that I think as a town we should get back to.
I agree.
And I'm not sure what forums work the best, but I'd love to see it. So.
Yeah, me too. Well, nice meeting you, Jim. Thank you.
For a lot of people, the only way you could apply for a job was to go online, and if you were unemployed and funds were tight, you had to go to the library and apply for something.
Right, and then some of these folks have to have
I just had this conversation. I think that what we should do is look at what acceptability
we need to settle into this tax rate. And we need to give everybody the confidence that we're going to settle into the tax rate once we the next two tax bills come out. And so once that happens, and I just had this interview with George, that according to my internal numbers, we are going to stay neutral, and that's going to give the tax rate.
Doesn't the state
He's on the left-hand
step
side.
in at that point, or is it only when there's a settlement that the state will step in and set the rate? The state's the one that sets the rate.
Well, ultimately, but it's they
It's according to budget.
Well, they ultimately sign off on the rate. The selectmen are the ones that set the rate, and the DRA ultimately has to sign off on that, and they'll come back and challenge that if they think we've overlooked something, you know. But no, ultimately the selectmen set the rates.
That's my big question. The whole campaign. I mean, because it's long term. You know, and you can't afford to look at things short term. You have to look at everything as long term.
Yep. So in the short term, we have two more tax bills to come out. This coming July, and then December of 2019, and at the end of 2019, we'll be setting the 2020 budget. Everyone will be settled into the new tax rate, and then as a community, we'll decide what we want to do for spending. We'll decide what we want to do for additional warrant articles. We'll decide the school's going to have to decide on that end what they want to do, and what everybody's threshold level is going to be for that tax rate. You know.
Yeah, because I'm very pro supporting the fire and police, only because they have saved my life.
Yep.
And if it wasn't for them, my family would be visiting my grave. So when it comes to things that they want, I think maybe people don't understand the value they bring until you need them.
Correct. Yep. You know, and I'm certainly not against fire or police. But that doesn't mean that we can't take a look at spending levels and challenge some of the budget requests and find creative ways to look at funding things in a different manner. You know.
Right. But I mean, as the town grows, I mean, when we moved here, there were 1,200 residents. There's 26, I think. And so I think we need to look at and say how having 4 people, is that really enough to cover the town, especially with the new facility that they built over on Brown Road.
When we say 4 people, we're talking police, fire?
Police.
Okay. Well, we have more than 4 people. We have 4 full-time officers, right. And we have...
then we borrow we have part-timers out of Seabrook.
Yeah, we have anywhere from 6 to 8 part-timers. You know, so and right now, you know, our coverage is, you know, we're not. We have coverage. We do have 24-hour coverage. May not be necessarily 24-hour coverage from our own
town.
Our own.
It's not.
It's
not.
So
it's not. It's covered from other.
Yeah, the county picks it up, you know, after a certain time. You know, so.
I was just curious. I mean, the tax bill, obviously, taxes are a huge issue. I think most people in town, I'd say probably half the people in town take assumption, but that's just, they haven't been here long enough to understand the historical perspective on when taxes, assessments versus when the tax rate increases.
You know, so one of the biggest things that I worked on this year is, you know, we've raised as a town a lot of money, and we put this money in different accounts and different funds, and it just sits there, and then we're asked to go out and create another fund to create for some other purpose, while we haven't spent down a fund that we previously created, and that's
Yeah,
something
but
that
you
we
have to look at and say, is a new fund, is someone requesting a new fund because they want exclusivity or they want those particular funds earmarked with no other possibilities to reach in?
So in that case, you most certainly could continue to fund a fund for a specific purpose. However, what the voters are going to be asked to vote on this year is to consolidate 4 or 5 funds and repurpose them into an expendable trust. No tax impact. We're looking to take 4 or 5 existing funds that have an approximate value of $38,000 and put them into one fund, and then that will get it's primarily for the government buildings, minus the library, and then we'll be able to now use that money, but not right now the funds are set up this way. If it was meant to replace Windows, and the voters raised and appropriated X amount of dollars to replace Windows in hypothetically the old library. Okay. Well, now the old library doesn't want to replace the window, but they want to replace the door. Okay. The way the fund was crafted, it doesn't allow you to take that money to buy the door, because you could only buy the window with it. Okay, so I've identified that that's a problem, and so by the creation of this expendable trust, it's giving us the opportunity to use those funds to replace the window, the door, the roof.
But yet there was still a boundary.
And the sale boundaries, exactly. So.
Just curious, that's all. I appreciate you asking my question.
Thank you.
Yeah, you need now they have it.
But if you were ever able to develop, say you were able to do all those things you said, and you were able to do it, and you could increase the value by 2 or 3 times, and get another $20 million.
You've got neighbors who come in.
Well, why don't you hit me in? Like in September?
September?
Yeah, I mean we can take. The only problem is I don't have a vehicle to put it in.
Did they want
That's
you?
You
didn't hear?
What's the issue?
Did you not have
I asked for you, and I said, "Oh no, I think it's a little issue."
Sure, it is an issue.
That was an issue.
Halfway across the state.
Yeah, no, I mean we could do it though for the Seagulls.
By the end of 10 years.
So there's certain areas you can just
We use the stuff that doesn't eat.
I know, it was awful. It was terrible. Yeah, it was scary. I was out for a few weeks at the
I'd rather.
They've threatened to arrest kids for selling lemonade.
And how about the idea of having like a community event?
I don't
In the city they do that.
Have you been? I haven't seen it in a while.
Yeah, that's right. It's been a while.
My husband, Rick.
Learned my lesson.
Yeah.
I just want to keep the weather year round.
That's right. That's great. That's funny.
The problem is that a lot of people are going to be worried and creeping across
I used to be on my town's budget committee. And there's no it's not like somewhere else. It's part of